getting into the dressing room and sort of playing first division cricket as a 10th standard boy and having someone like Mr. Roger Binney as my captain, these were, you can just think about it. I was 10 years old when Mr. Syed Kirmani and Mr. Roger Binney lifted the 1983 World Cup. I was 13 years old when I saw Vishy do what he did in Australia. And suddenly, 3 or 4 years later, in 1989 or 90, I was sharing a dressing room with them playing club cricket. For me, that was an incredible motivation and an incredible boost to my cricketing career. But more importantly, I think, what I learned in those formative years, what I got from a lot of these senior players, what I got from the club, I think is something that, I'll forever be grateful for. Just the support that I received, just the understanding that I received from so many of them through those years when I was just starting out to play the game, the lessons that I learned watching Roger bat in a club game, watching Mr. Kirmani, the dedication with which he came even to play a club game. I mean, Mr. Kirmani would come to a club game and his kit would be spotless. His dedication to playing the game and the match, it was a club game, and this was Mr. Syed Kirmani who had played 88 test matches. He could have come there and, rocked up and just had a laugh. But, he would come and play it with all seriousness, or sitting, bumming a ride from with Sadanand Vishwanath on his two-wheeler. Very frightful experience, I must warn you, for a 15-year-old. Going to Bell Ground with Vishy on his motorbike in those days was a great thrill for me, sitting behind Sadanand Vishwanath. But, I won't use the word Dravid used, but I will say that was sometimes quite a frightening experience. But just to show that, for a young man, the point I'm really trying to make is, for a young man, a lot of my memories are associated with that time, with that era. There's so many stalwarts here. I mean, I've obviously mentioned the great players, but there were so many other people associated with the club, whether it's Imti, whether it's Mr. Barda, and I won't I cannot mention all the names of all the people who played such a big role in my career at that young age. So I think just for me to be the president here today when the club is celebrating 100 years, I consider it a huge honor, a huge privilege that's been bestowed upon me. I really hope that, with all your support, we'll be able to make this year a really successful year, and not, like I said, not necessarily only for BUCC, but really a celebration of what club cricket is and what club cricket means and how important it is in the growth and development of so many of us cricketers. Firstly, actually, we do have a BUCC player in the Indian team at the moment, not only a Karnataka player. So we have KL Rahul, which is something we're pride in. But yeah, I think these things happen in cycles. I think, it was not a long time ago. I think Manish is still part of our one-day team. Karun was part of the team just recently. Mayank Agarwal has just got into the side, so congratulations to him. I think it's a fantastic achievement for him to be recognized after all that he's done over the last couple of years. So yeah, we've Vinay Kumar has been there recently. So yeah, I think these things happen in cycles. There was a time when I was playing and there were 4 or 5 of us, and then there was 1 or 2 people. Kiri and Roger were there in the 1983 World Cup. They've been on many tours. Vishy has been there. So I think these things happen, and obviously we'd like to see more players, from Karnataka. As long as they're doing well and they continue to do well, then hopefully they get selected. I mean, I think the late Mr. K.K. Tarapo was sort of my coach, and he'd seen me, like I said, almost at the age of 13 or 14 when I joined the club first, and he'd seen me play, and he was around, and he sort of sadly passed away after I played 5 or 6 years of international cricket. But for those years, I always relied on him, and he watched a lot of my matches. And I'll never forget, I was on my first tour to England, and for so many of the BUCC members here who will sort of identify with this and will recognize this. Mr. K.K. Tarapo, I mean, this was the days of, there was no email, and Mr. Tarapo would write letters. He'd write in that mail, and I think, before my test debut at Lords, I actually got a letter from him. You sort of go to the dressing room and there was a letter, and it was from Mr. K.K. Tarapo, and it was a letter just wishing me well and saying, keep your chin up, and you haven't got an opportunities yet, but your time will come, and you're a really good player. And that was the kind of care and attention that someone like the late Mr. K.K. Tarapo, like, Kiribhai called him Sir, K.K. Sir, had for us. So it was not really a relationship of player and a coach. It was a lot more than that. And that's what this club, taught me, and that's the values that this club gave me. That a lot of these relationships with even so many of these former players is not one of senior, junior, but it's, one of equal, it's one of care, it's one of mentorship more than anything else. It's really mentorship. It's not a senior, junior relationship. And a lot of times in my technique, if I had issues, I always relied on Mr. K.K. Tarapo to, talk to him or chat with him about things, and, he'd be watching it on television and he'd say, maybe this or this could be something that you could change or you could look at. So yeah, till he was around, I definitely, sought his advice and leaned on him quite a bit. I always just tell them that the greatest satisfaction you will get is in playing Test cricket, and I think Kiribai and Roger and they're great inspirations to me. And when I grew up, they were inspirations to me because they played Test cricket. And they were Test cricketers. Obviously, the 1983 World Cup was a big inspiration for all of us. But I think they will agree with me that the toughest form of the game was Test cricket. It was the hardest form of the game. It tested you. Nothing tested you like Test cricket does, technically. And so that's the challenge. I tell under-19 kids that if you want to be challenged, and this is the profession you've chosen, if you want to be challenged to your limit, then Test cricket is what you should try and play. If you don't play, yes, there are other forms of the game, and I love 2020 and I love watching one-day cricket, and they're very skillful forms of the game as well. And if you can't play it, then yes, you should play also 2020 and one-day cricket. It can be done. It's not easy, and not many people are able to do it, but that should be your goal. Institutions like this and platforms like this hopefully give us the opportunity to create that. A lot of your learning and a lot of wise counsel sometimes happens in an unstructured environment. When you're in a club, it's not that Mr. Kirmani or Mr. Roger Mini sat me down and gave me a lecture. You learned watching them. It was unstructured. You watched them. You watched the way they behaved. You watched the way they conducted themselves. I think it's a dream for everyone to be able to have some sort of facility of your own. I think, but yeah, you're right. I think we're far away from that. You see that kind of thing in the UK, and you see a lot of that, and that builds a real great club culture. But unfortunately, it's probably unrealistic in the city and where we live, and yeah, but it's great food for thought, something I guess you've put in our heads, and maybe something that we should try and achieve, even if not our own ground, but leasing something or doing something like that and creating something like that. So yeah, I think it's one of those things that's obviously ideal but not easy to accomplish.
Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and leave your comments in the comment section below. Click on the bell icon for notifications.